Falcon Dagger, the last book in the Falcon Chronicle series. That's coming up next, right here on The Right Stuff. Hi, and welcome to The Right Stuff. I'm the Queen, Parker J. Thank you so much for joining me. As you know, we have my wonderful guest co host and contributor today, Azalea DeVille, talking about the latest book she has in the Falcon Chronicle series. She's been on the show several times, and we've enjoyed each and every time she's been with us. But today is special because she finally has to her series, and I cannot wait to tell you about it in just a few moments. As always, I want to thank you for your support. We have been showcasing Christian authors for almost 12 years, guys. And as God gives us grace, we'll continue to do so. If you want to help out, go to patreon.com/right stuff, see what you can do. And as always, we cover your prayers. To stay up to date with PJC Media, go to pjcmedia.net, click the follow button, and you'll never miss a show. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for updates, uploads, and more. Go ahead, subscribe today. Lastly, I want to thank you. Without further ado, I'm going to bring my guest on board. Zelia, how you doing?
Hi there, Parker. Doing well. Thank you for
It
having me.
is it is so good to see you again. It's just been, well, actually, I won't say see you because the last few episodes have been audio only. And now that we
Yes.
switched to video, it's like, oh, I can see who you are now. You're not just a bio picture. It moves, it speaks, it's one of those things. So yeah, it's real good to
Yeah.
just connect with you again, Dozelia.
Thank you. You too.
I was thinking about it as we were getting ready to do our show. Dear viewer and listener, before we started, I literally gnawed Azalea's ear off for 40 minutes, and the poor dear just listened to me. So, but she's such a good listener. Each time, she's always been such a good listener. And I think about how when you're writing, you have so much to do. You have to make sure you effectively bring about the message that you want to have shown throughout your books. And you hope you do that effectively. So now that you have the end of the series, what was the message that you wanted readers to know about your Falcon series? And just based off the preliminary reviews you received from all over the books, what has that message been received well?
Yes, it has been received well. And the main message was, life is not easy and we need to resist evil and pursue good and the adventure that comes along with that. And that
You
there's hope.
you say there's a venture that comes along with that, but most people don't see struggle as an adventure. They don't see conflict as an adventure, and they don't see confrontation as an adventure. If anything, they see that as a hindrance to adventure. What would you say to that?
I would say that I think it has to do with hindsight. It's, much more of an adventure once you've made it through it. So I think that's where that comes in. And also, if you're outside the situation looking in at it happening to someone else, it can seem like an adventure, but it can give you courage in when it happens to you, that you realize what it can be, what the possibilities are, and there's just a lot there.
Now, your main character in the story, she has gone from being a pampered princess, if you will, to being something of a warrior. Now, throughout that whole transition, there have been other stories that you've interspersed throughout this narrative. With each story, do you think that different readers have gravitated to different characters? Which ones are the more popular ones? And do you know why they have?
Well, I'm not sure about that. I do know there's one particular character that someone liked, and then the story took a turn, but they weren't sure, but they liked how it turned out. Um, but I am sure, depending on people's backgrounds, but they gravitate to one character over another. And this particular volume has, the final novel, Falcon Dagger, and then it has a companion story novel that follows Brother Rolf and his story, but it basically segues into it. and then there's a couple prequels. And I did it that way because it would cost more to put them out individually, and it would also cost you, as my reader more, and I didn't want to do that. And I thought, well, hey, I'll just give you a couple bonus stories, you know.
And who
Um,
doesn't like bonus stories? Who doesn't like bonus stories, especially when they're
I
already
like them
invested?
myself.
Okay,
Yeah.
especially they're already invested. So, dear viewers, the first time you ever talking to Azalea DeBille, Falcon Dagger is the final novel of the Falcon Chronicle series, and it's where fantasy tropes ignite the imagination. The coming heir, evil lords, court intrigue, haven and hunt, rivals and romance. And in each of these books, like she said, there is a companion and two prequels. That's all available today on Amazon.com or wherever books are sold. Now, the major, I want to say, tagline, if you will, is Falcon Dagger, Warrior, Seeker, Apprentice. Kingdoms fall, one life, one land, one loyalty, and Cieri's daughter, first rival, first oath, first victory. And all these are included, along with other stories, all these are included in Falcon Dagger. So make sure you go ahead and pick up your copy today and love of my sister. And when you finish reading the story, let her know what you thought about it. I tell people all the time, authors really do want to know that we did the thing that we said we were going to do. And we can't know that unless you go ahead and leave us a review, letting us know. So make sure pick up your copy today. Now, when you were sending, now that you have this series here and you get to the marketing part, the packaging part, you label the series as Noble Bright. And I want people to understand why this is significant because most of the culture has been influenced by fantasy shows that are grimdark. And one of
Right.
the fantasy shows, even though I read the books back in the day, was Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is a very dark, very grim fantasy. Honestly, I won't lie, I did enjoy the books, but understandably, it wasn't as fleshy as
Yeah.
they made this the TV series. It had that in there, but it wasn't like you didn't get exposition through flesh techniques, we'll say. So,
Yes.
uh,
Yes.
but Game of Thrones, Westworld, they all kind of go grim dark, and they use a lot of
Yes.
sensuality. And then some of the young adult books actually are doing the same because a lot of the young adult books now are actually written for adults, and you
Right.
have 16-year-olds talking like they're 32. And so,
Yes.
so your book is really capturing the adventure of young adult with
Yes.
all the mystery, all the uncertainty, all the things that make life difficult for young people, but you're putting it into a particular world. And so when you say
Yes.
noble bright, how do you use that term to describe your books?
I use that term because it focuses on the conflict between our nature that wants to do what's wrong and our nature that wants to do what's noble. And that is something all of us face no matter what time period we're in. And so you can relate back to that time period as well as now. And I think kids need to know that it doesn't have to be the norm. I think a lot of them really like and enjoy that kind of story, but they haven't always seen it in real life. But to know that it's possible and that there still is people who will act with honor and keep their word and fight for what's right is a very encouraging thing. And we all need that. And I really enjoy that type of story. I mean, one of my favorite authors, C.J. Brightly, she wrote a series that brings martial arts into it, kind of like mine. It's called the Erdeman Honor series, and it starts out with A Cold Wind. And it's a trilogy. I love that series. She's done it really well. Um, but that's basically why, because the name really says it, Noble Bright. It has to do with nobility, and but there is a bright hope, and that's something to be admired. And
It's interesting that you said young people do want to know that people can keep their words, that there are heroes, that heroes aren't just the other side of evil, that they are
yeah,
distinct from evil. And nowadays, with moral relativism being so prevalent in the society, there are people who don't know what sin is.
right.
They don't think sin is a thing. It's just, oh, I made a mistake. And no, when we sin, we offend God. God is offended by our sin. And he
Yeah.
said the wages of sin is death,
Mm-hmm.
but the gift of God is eternal life. And so when you
Right.
hear these absolute concepts, a lot of young people don't really understand what that means because they're like, why are you talking in absolutes? Why are you making absolute vocabulary even? Why are you saying there could only be this way? Because they've been taught from a very
Yes.
young age that it doesn't matter which way you go, we're all get to the same point
Right.
until they discover that life
Uh-huh.
doesn't always work that way. So that,
Yes.
sometimes
Yes.
you miss the opportunity.
Right.
Sometimes you go through the wrong door and you can't go back. So
Right. Exactly. The
yeah,
reality of absolutes comes home when the rubber meets the road, or when you like in, these stories and stuff, someone makes the wrong choice, someone dies. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
someone makes the right choice, someone lives. You know, there are consequences.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's a finality to some of our decisions. There's a
yes.
finality to them. And that's why you always want to encourage make good decisions. But if you don't even know what a good decision is, how can you even make it? It reminds me of
Right.
the biblical narrative about Josiah, King Josiah, and when he became
Mhm.
king and he found the book of the law, he's like, hey, what's this? And the
Right.
book of the law had been hidden for so long. And
Yes.
he's like, we have messed up royally. And,
Yeah.
and the Lord
That's a good line.
blessed him. But mind you, the Lord said, it's going to happen. The people knew
Yeah.
it's going to happen, King, but it won't happen
Right.
during your lifetime.
Yeah. That was amazing.
Yeah,
That was a
you
really
know.
great story.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
you have these narratives coming in and that young people need. And so in
Right.
your Falcon Chronicle series, you're following the exploits of one particular character. And she's gone through a whole lot throughout these stories. In the final Dagger, we get to the culmination of her story as well as some of the other peripheral characters that go along with her journey. And so
Yeah.
let's visit her again. When we last left her, she was experiencing what?
Basically, she had come over from Arabia to Britain on a task to find someone lost in a family for the wazir, so that, or that's another name for vizier. It's just a little bit different way of saying it. Um, and basically, she had to do that to take the price off of her father and her sister's heads to basically save their lives. So she came back, she found the person that they were looking for and rescued them, sent her back as requested. And then the only thing was she had been carrying a falcon dagger, and she gave it to the girl that she rescued and sent her back to her father, to the wazir. And when she did that, she didn't realize that that dagger was a long lost token of the wazir's family. And one of the people that they had been looking for had been killed in Britain. And so he automatically assumed that her family was involved in the murder. So he came over basically, supposedly, to free her because she fulfilled her task, but in reality, he's going to call her family to account. So that ended up happening. She ended up being able to basically unmask the traitor and bring things around so that they were all basically on the same side again. And then that was the end of that story. Then the next one comes in, and there's still more traitors around, of course, there always are. Someone else you have to deal with, right? And there's intrigue and stuff involved there. And basically, they have to uncover the spy ring. And she is presently in Cierheld, and they have found another weapon that she just found in a stream, but it's of the same make, Damascus steel. And basically, it's been stolen from their stronghold. And they're like, okay, this opens up a whole new scenario. What's going on here? We've got more enemies. What do we need to do here? So that's kind of where the story opens.
And what's interesting about the Falcon Chronicle series, dear viewer, is the fact that it takes place in medieval times. It's young adult, and it's a traveling story. So they go all over the world here. I mean, not all over the world, but they go over the known ancient world there. And I like that because the more you travel, you actually broaden your horizons as you meet different
Yes.
cultures and people. And there's a clash of cultures as well. And then you also put our main character, and I always mess up her name.
Kyrin.
Say again.
Kyrin.
Thank you.
Mhm.
You always her. I always mess up her name.
You can call her Kyrin too. A lot of people call her Kyrin. But
Yeah,
Kyrin,
but it's
Kyrin,
Kyrin.
either way.
I always mess it up though. But Kyrin, she is saved from one sort of lifestyle, but she's thrown into the turmoil of the what she currently goes through all her adventures. But she learns about different cultures and people. She learns how to fight. She learns how to do lots of different things, right? And so meeting different people when you travel actually broadens your mental capacity for understanding what different people think. And I think this is
Mhm.
significant for young adults too, because so many of them are glued to their phones and glued to their iPads that they don't look up.
That's correct.
And here you have Kyrin, who is in the ancient world learning. She's not consumed by a tiny screen. She's not consumed by that. She was going to get married, and then things went to kaput when we first meet her. So there's a lot going on here. So for those of you who have young adult readers who like a lot of meat to their reading and they want to be more challenged, because these books are recommended for young adult readers, but you don't want to give to, like, let's say a 7-year old. I don't think you probably want a little bit more,
Yes.
like 13, 14 years old,
Right.
because they're a little meatier.
Mhm.
I would say. When you say, like, you recommend like 13 to 14 years old?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah,
Yes, it is a little bit higher reading level and a little bit more complexity than, some of the,
yeah,
7 and 8
yeah,
year olds. It'd be a little thick for them.
yeah. They were like, "What happened?" I don't understand. So yeah, so this is recommended. So again, dear viewer, make sure you go ahead, pick up Falcon's Dagger, which is the last of the Falcon Chronicles series on Amazon.com. Now, a lot has changed, not just with Kyrin, but with you, because you're the author who has created this whole series. And when you first started off, you were probably a lot like a character, really learning about the world, the world of
Definitely
writing,
really
telling
learning.
the
Yeah,
story.
they're always, always learning about the world.
Mhm.
And, always learning more about writing too. Definitely starting out on that. But yeah,
Would,
I've learned a lot. A lot has happened. And
would you
moved.
say that as you've grown in this thing called being a writer, that the thoughts you had at the beginning are not the same as you have now?
Yeah, they've probably not quite exactly the same. They've definitely developed and, kind of filled in the holes and stuff like that. And yeah,
Hmm.
I,
Now, I'm sorry, I mean after you, because I want to make sure we reach. I always want to make sure we reach those listeners who are writers who haven't picked up a book yet, and I always want to encourage them because I believe they do have a
yeah.
story to tell. Um, what was one of the most difficult things that you've learned over the course of the writing of the series that you can share with our viewer here?
Well, I would say going back after 4 or 5 years break between the last book that I had written and then this last one in the series to finish it. That was hard. I actually went back through and reread all the books, and I had actually gone through and rewritten the first three slightly, making the transitions better and stuff, and then republished them just because I wanted the flow to be a little better. But to reconnect with those characters was hard. And it took a lot of work and praying. And thank the Lord he brought it together. And
Amen.
yeah, and it's kind of a tribute to, I was in martial arts some, and the last story here is in tribute to my grandmaster who died a couple of years ago. And it's based in Korea, and it is, very, in a sense, kind of historical there, but it also mirrors him and what he taught me about life, which is, it's not all about kicking and punching. It's about courtesy, integrity, perseverance, and never give up in the pursuit of knowledge, which is, in Korean they say pilsung. And that um, is basically, I had started one series or one book, and I gave up on it. And then I told the Lord, well, I'm going to start this and I'm not going to quit unless you tell me you want me to quit. So he brought this about and he'll get it to who he wants to read it. And I hope that people enjoy it and are encouraged. And that
You
people who,
mentioned about the martial arts, and you're the second author I believe I've had who has had a martial arts background.
Mhm.
And they often talk about how the tenets of martial arts actually discipline them as authors in different ways. You know what I mean? And the other
Yes.
guy was Scott Kemack. He actually wrote, well, he writes more grittier. Um,
Okay.
yeah, he writes very gritty. So there's violence, swearing, you know, warnings all in
Yeah.
there. But he had a character who was also a martial artist in his book. Um, but I've always found it interesting about having that connection between Western thought and Eastern thought, and they blended it together. And
Yeah.
I find that fascinating.
Yeah. I think, and actually in that story with Kyron's mentor, who in the story here, in this book, it is the prequel. And it is how he basically takes the tenets that he grew up with that are part of the martial art and they come to full fruition in Christianity. Because there is, in the Eastern philosophy, there's that whole idea that good and evil are both sides of the same coin. And like you were saying earlier, they're not, they are distinct. And there is a line there, complete line. They are opposites. They are not two sides of yin yang, and truth, pursuit of truth. That is really what a lot of these stories are about, and the beauty that comes from that.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you mentioned that because it's important to have that distinction that good does exist and evil does exist.
Yes,
And it makes life easier acknowledging the truth of
right.
that.
Yes, you hit it on
Because
the head.
if you keep saying that, well, it's just two sides of the same coin, then neither has any power or influence. So when someone goes like one of the, and I don't want to get too much into current day happening, but I thought about the CEO guy who got killed. That's right now at the time of this recording. That's like really big right now, and people
Okay.
are happy that this man got killed. And I'm thinking to myself, killing the guy isn't really going to help healthcare problems.
Yes,
You know what I'm saying? Like as complex as healthcare is in the United States of America, shooting
right.
people isn't necessarily going to fix that. You know what I mean?
No,
So
no.
people are like, well, that's what they get. I'm like, no, he's still a person who has a family. We shouldn't
Right.
relish anyone's murder. We shouldn't
No.
relish that.
Right.
Again, I'm not saying the guy's innocent. I'm not saying he doesn't
Mhm.
have consequences, but he
Right.
had a family. He
Right.
had I think an ex-wife. He had
Right.
kids. That ex-wife lost the father of her children.
Right. It needs to be lawful.
Yeah,
His consequences need to be lawful. I mean,
yeah,
even just say theoretically,
yeah.
he deserved the death penalty. It
Hmm.
should be done lawfully, not murder.
Yeah, you just
There's
don't
a
go
big
up and murder
difference.
someone and go, hey,
No.
hey, I got you. And it's this weird callousness that has
Yeah.
pervaded the society. Not everyone in the society has this, of course, but that's
Mhm.
why you need books like yours, which show the distinction between um, the muddiness of moral relativism and understanding that good and evil, there is a good, there is absolute truth. And these are
Yes.
very scary things in our current society, but
Right.
because they're scary, because people don't want to acknowledge that. And it's
Yes.
okay to acknowledge that. It's okay to
Right.
say good exists, and if good exists, evil exists.
Right. And even
And if
back
evil,
then, they had some of the same ideas. Like,
yeah,
I actually did reference, you've probably heard of the Great Reset.
yes,
I actually
yes.
made a slight reference to that, drawing a
Hmm.
parallel to a system of thinking back then.
Hmm. And
Um,
again, there's a cyclical nature to human nature, like it's a
Yes,
lot of the old things happening to new people, right? What
mm,
makes our generation unique is that we have more advanced technology.
right,
But I am from the school of thought that during the antediluvian period time, I think the tech was even more higher advanced than our tech because our tech is more digital based. I think it was more nature based. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
wow.
I know I sound like a crazy
I'd be
person, but
interested in hearing that sometime.
yeah, because I think ancient man like Adam will be way smarter than me. I mean, he came programmed straight from the hand of God. Okay, so
Right, right.
his
Their DNA
IQ would
hadn't
have
run
blew
down
up.
yet.
130 would have been an idiot. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
130 is an idiot compared to Adam. And so, and especially if you're living to be almost 1,000 years old, what can you
right.
do? What can we do in 100 years? What can
Yes,
we do in 1,000? You know what I mean? So,
yes. Hmm. Yeah,
that's why I think the tech was
right.
much more advanced. But that's just me. That's another subject for another time. But I'm glad that you took time out to be with me today. We don't want to keep it too long, but I'm so glad
Sure.
you took time with
Thanks,
me
Parker.
today to hanging out with each other. Because you've been
Now,
on the show
what
several times.
is
And next for you, Azalea? Are you writing more? Are you switching off genres? What you doing?
Well, some people have said I'm switching off genres.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure yet if I am or not. I do have another series planned. I didn't expect you to pop that question, but I do have another series planned. It is not exactly time travel, but kind of like portal fantasy
Oh, nice.
and something kind of an experiment along C.S. Lewis's line there with the Narnia series, but I don't want to give away too much.
No,
But
don't. I want to read it. I like Portal stuff. I want to read it.
yeah,
So, yeah. Well, I
cool.
like a lot of books. I just don't like
Yeah,
taxes. But
yeah, but it'll be kind of current events too, current and futuristic.
mhm.
Uh, but yeah,
So it's like urban, like it's an urban setting.
yes.
Like, okay, gotcha.
Actually, they'll be traveling to a different universe and a different world, but then they'll be
Hmm.
at a school here called Stone Point School. And there'll
Okay.
be tech involved and stuff like that too, but they'll actually be going to another world where they have all different kinds of societies, anywhere from basically middle age level to, advanced tech like China.
Gotcha. That sounds like fun. So don't tell me more, but dear viewer, you know what's going on. So we have all her information below at the bottom of the screen where you can sign up for her any kind of update she has going on. You can sign up for her newsletter. She has one. All that stuff is going to be at the bottom of the show description of this video. So make sure you go ahead, follow her on her social media everywhere. And you're going to definitely enjoy reading her stories. If you didn't get the first one, make sure you go ahead and pick up the first book in this wonderful series, available all below
Sorry.
on the show description. Now,
I will be
Azalea.
making the first book free on my website because it's not free on Amazon anymore. So
Okay.
I will be putting that up soon.
Oh, good. So once you have that up, we'll put that link there too. So you just heard that to make a first book free. So you may be like, I don't know if I want to try Azalea. Try it for free. And then once you get the book, you're going to love it. Go ahead and support her financially because we all would like to get a cup of coffee once in a while. Go ahead and support her and get the other books in the series. Won't be disappointed. I enjoy them so far, and I know you will too. Now, we always end the show with an encouraging word for those authors out there in the viewership whom God has given the gift to write. We want to encourage them to pick up the pen and do so. So go ahead and do that for me.
Well, I would say perseverance is a big thing because there's so much to writing a book and to publishing it that you just have to not give up. You have to keep working at it. And even if something seems like it's impossible or you're running late, like I do a lot, I miss my deadlines regularly. You just have to keep on going and get it done as soon as you can and do a good job at it at the same time. Revision is always a big part of things and learning, and you learn more every book. And it's a blessing to be a part of that journey. And I hope that you become a part of that circle as well.
Amen. Azalea, thank you for being with me on the show today. Really enjoyed having you. And as always, I can't wait to have you back. Have you back soon.
Thank you, Parker, very much.
Be a part of the circle of authors who have experienced some of the same highs and lows that you have. We've been there with our first drafts. We've stared at blank pieces of paper or a blank screen. We've gotten frustrated with characters that won't tell us who they are. We've tried to find that perfect word. We're trying to create that perfect twist. We've all been there. We've all had that same struggle, and we want you to be a part of that community. So, what are you waiting for? Go ahead, pick up the pen, and write stuff. Thank you so much for joining me for this edition of The Right Stuff. I'm the Queen, Parker J, and you have a wonderful, absolutely glorious, blessed day.